As it was mentioned, I'm teaching at Galatasaray University, which is located in Orthodox, Istanbul, the Mesachoro, if my Greek is not mistaken. And on my way to school every day, I first see the minarets of the mosque built by the Balyans, an Armenian family of architects under the reign of the Sultan Abdülmecid, on the shore of the Bosphorus. Is it mere coincidence that the Bosphorus Bridge, which is not only the physical gateway from one continent to another, but also symbolizes the link between civilizations and cultures, starts here from Ortaköy? A few steps away, there is the Greek Orthodox Church of Agios Fokas, dedicated to the emperor. Just next to the church, there is the Sephardic synagogue of Etz Achaim, the Tree of Life. A few steps backwards, two Armenian churches are located, one Catholic and the other Gregorian. In old times, these sanctuaries of different religions and denominations, situated within a perimeter of 100 meters, functioned together. Their respective flocks lived, worked, ate, talked, prayed, gossiped, enjoyed themselves, suffered, and died together. Today, interfaith dialogue is a sophisticatedly organized activity. Once upon a time, it was a natural and probably unnoticed part of social life. As a notion, interfaith dialogue encompasses scientific debates between theologians and other scholars, but it also means simple exchange of ideas or simple sharings of or feelings between ordinary people. In the latter sense, it has a long history. In the first sense, it seems to be a rather modern invention. In reality, interfaith dialogue, in its broader sense, has an immemorial history on both scholarly and popular grounds. The thing is that it was not named as such. Dialogue was always warmly welcomed on Anatolian earth, qualified by the French famous historian Balivet as a religious reconciliation space. To cite just a few examples involving famous personalities, Mevlana Celaleddin Rumi, founder of the Order of the Whirling Dervishes, the Mevlevis, had encounters with Byzantine ecclesiastical authorities. Saint Gregory Palamas, during his captivity by the Ottomans, was curiously welcomed as a kind of visiting professor, I would say, and discussed with the Sultan Orhan and Muslim theologians about the doctrine of Christ. Ottoman monarchs did not monopolize the organization of interfaith dialogue. Byzantine emperors enjoyed discussing religion with Muslim warriors, theologians, often mystics. On the Ottoman side, probably the most enthusiastic protagonist of the dialogue is certainly Mehmet II the Conqueror, who asked the Greek Patriarch Scholarios Gennadios to prepare a Christian catechism in Turkish language. Slightly later on, Selim I, the first Ottoman Sultan assuming the caliphal dignity, with the conquest of the holy cities of Islam, rebuilt the monastery of Xiropotamo in Mount Athos and became its tutor. And to honor the Sultan, the Xiropotamo monks established the custom to light 6 oil lamps before the icon of the 40 saints of Sevastia, who, according to the legend, had helped the Sultan in his campaign in Egypt. We can multiply these examples as we wish, but I will not dwell later on historical examples, but I would rather like to emphasize, make some points on the current situation of interfaith dialogue in Turkey. The current landscape of the interfaith dialogue in Turkey is very colorful, and especially after the 1980s, many activities have been organized on many grounds. On official grounds, organized by the governmental authorities, but also by NGOs and religious authorities of all religions and denominations. The dynamism and audacity of the interfaith dialogue is today astonishing. I will quote the impressions of Monsignor Pelâtre, the Catholic Vicaire Apostolique, at a reception given by His All Holiness the Ecumenical Patriarch on the occasion of the International Conference on Peace and Tolerance. Quote, Monsignor Pelâtre is the Apostolic Vicar, I don't know the English title, how it is, he's the highest Catholic representative in Istanbul. He wrote, "One had never seen in the Patriarchate's halls Muslim turbans fraternizing with Orthodox metropolitans' headgears. full green-dressed Albanian Bektashi leaders standing side by side with a cardinal of the Catholic Church. It is not customary to hear the Ecumenical Patriarch presenting his congratulations to Muslims for the coming Ramadan. During the general sessions of the conference, one could see the Chief of Islam in Turkey, the Patriarch of Fanar, and the Chief Rabbi Schneier, and other Jewish delegates sitting side by side. So this is Monsignor Pedart who commented a very interesting initiative of interfaith dialogue. At that point, I have to emphasize that His All Holiness, the Ecumenical Patriarch, has played a prominent and active role in the development of interfaith dialogue activities. And in his writings, His All Holiness had already manifested his desire of dialogue with Muslims. I'm quoting him. Christians, and particularly Orthodox Christians, say the Patriarch, should ally with the authentic Islam in order to surpass modernity from inside, according to his expression, by a new cultural mutation. Together, they should remind the irreducible character of the human person, image of God for Christians, his Khalifa or successor for Muslims. So this shows how His All Holiness is enthusiastic to promote interfaith dialogue activities. Today, despite innumerable obstacles and opponents, the current stage of dialogue should allow us to be optimistic. There is a substantial will from the Turkish Muslim side towards dialogue, whilst Islamo-Christian dialogue used to be considered a unilateral Christian initiative. Though modest and timorous, the first attempts began to give their fruits, so beneficial for humanity. All participants to the International Conference on Peace and Tolerance agreed to declare, in substance, that war cannot be justified in the name of God, and a crime committed in the name of religion is a crime against religion. Interfaith dialogue is not only an ethical obligation, it's a practical necessity. In the nowadays world it's a topos that is being called the global village, no nation has the luxury to shut itself at home. If Turkey's historical minorities' numerical presence has drastically declined, its economic and political relations with foreign countries is flourishing, which gives rise to the establishment of various foreign communities in Turkey. Time has come for Turks to understand that all these foreigners that we meet in Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, and other cities' streets, as well as in holiday resorts, may have not only a language, a culture, a way of life, a cuisine that is more or less different than ours, but also a different religion. In turn, all foreigners visiting or living in Turkey are invited to learn about Islam, particularly in its Turkish version. The irresistible temptation to meet the other may lead to the discovery of a rich legacy of common values and concepts which eclipse preconceived differences and divergences. Muslim and Christian scholars and religious men may disagree on many issues of abstract theology. When engaged in a sincere and genuine dialogue, they are always surprised to discover more and more convergences in the daily understanding of the relationship between the Creator and the created. Besides, Turkey is persistent in its ambition to join the EU. The eternal fiancé of EU cannot ignore the Judeo-Christian roots of European civilization. But these roots have no cultural monopoly in Europe. Islam is a part of both historical and current European culture. The numerous Muslim communities living in almost all EU countries are now an integral part of today's Europe's plurality. In its European vocation, Turkey is predestinated to play a crucial role in the relations between religions, especially between Christianity and Islam. Turkish population is by majority Muslim, of different denominations. Turkish state's political-legal structure is secular, which may be a valuable trump card in the context of dialogue. If, inshallah, God willing, Turkey will join the EU, the new member will present a very interesting and I would say a pleasant paradox. It will bring within the EU borders a bigger Muslim population than any other member state, as well as the original holy places where Christianity emerged as a new religion and defined itself. As a Muslim, I'm not really entitled to remind all these places, but just to give a few examples. Nicaea, Ephesus, Constantinople, Istanbul, Chalcedon, Kadıköy, as we call it now, where church councils were held in order to define the faith. And many other places mentioned in the New Testament and the letters of apostles. I think around 70 localities mentioned in the New Testament are located in current Anatolia. And besides, Jesus Christ's native tongue, the Aramaic, is still being spoken by Syriacs, or I will rather say Arameans now in Turkey. Would it be daring to add not only the beginning but also the end of the history according to Christianity is taking place in Turkey, since all the places mentioned in the Apocalypse are located in Western Anatolia? Today's dialogue has two inspirations. It is a revival of the graceful traditions of the past, but it is also a future-oriented initiative, a pledge for tomorrow's, hopefully, more peaceful world. Among today's interfaith activities of Turkey, a very successful and a spectacular one is the Interfaith Iftar, the fast-breaking dinner in Ramadan. The Interfaith Iftars started with the invitation by their Muslim friends of non-Muslim dignitaries who replied by organizing their own iftars, sometimes in the very religious institutions such as the Orthodox Ecumenical Patriarchate or the Armenian Patriarchate or the Chief Rabbinate. These events usually inaugurated and concluded with interfaith prayers. They started with interfaith prayers and concluded with interfaith prayers, triggered very positive reactions in the medias. However, certain theologians, Muslim theologians, though not opposed to interfaith dialogue in principle, criticized the interfaith iftars because, I'm quoting, non-Muslims should not take part to a Muslim religious practice. And then, historians discovered that interfaith iftars used to be an Ottoman practice. The Sultan invited, at least one evening of the Ramadan, all religious leaders of the empire, and sometimes the corps diplomatique, to share their Muslim neighbors' food and spirituality. I will risk a paraphrase. In Christian context, some persons are told to be more Catholic than the Pope. In Islam, we have people more Muslim than the Caliph. Some keep their distance to dialogue by fear of the other, simply because they do not know the other. It often happens that such reluctant people's fear gets broken at the first contact, and they become the most zealous partisans of the dialogue. Exchanges and contacts are essential to build an enduring dialogue, and such activities should start at early ages. As experience shows, reciprocal visits between schools of different denominations and faith give their fruits in long run. And also, congratulations for various denominations' respective holidays, and revival of such activities are also very important and fruitful. I sincerely deplore that some of my co-citizens and co-religionists perceive religious minorities' presence in Turkey as an issue of national security. To my humble view, their presence is a matter of national pride. Religious minorities witness of pluralism, diversity, colorfulness. But the trivial discourse which treats and presents religious minorities as a kind of tourist attraction should be at any rate avoided. With their diversity, religious minorities are certainly contributing to the richness of the social landscape. But we should not lose of sight that their members are full citizens of a secular state and share equal rights and freedoms with the members of the majority. As human beings, they form an integral part of a society and constitute potential and often active partners of the interfaith dialogue. Dialogue and mutual understanding are common values of ours, and we often commit the naive mistake of thinking that these values enjoy overall sharing. The raison d'être of some political and social movements is conflict, friction, polemics. They are fed by violent discourse and enmity. Dialogue helps solve problems, paves the way to understanding and reconciliation. Therefore, no surprise that dialogue is not welcomed by those who benefit from the persistence of the problems. In that regard, the manipulation of religion by ideological and especially nationalistic discourse reveals to be particularly dangerous. Religion may be and often is an element of national identity. But unfortunately, the history teaches us that nationalisms have often tendency to affirm and maintain their existence by reference to the enemy, especially when they are facing internal crisis. The problem is exacerbated in case the national enemy is also identified as the religious one. No religion incites to combat the national enemy. Concepts such as nations or nation-states, as Mustafa Akyol has very skillfully explained, these concepts are modern times inventions. However, confusions are easy and tempting. Xenophobia can rapidly degenerate into holy war. We should not in any way forget that we belong to our respective nations for the fraction of a second that is our lifetime, and we remain morally responsible for eternity. Our nation's respective histories offer bad examples to avoid and good ones that inspires us when we are called to build our common future. At this point, please allow me as a Muslim to quote Pope John Paul II. There is no peace without justice, and there is no justice without forgiveness. I will humbly add, history should instill wisdom and not revenge. Dialogue is a challenge for accepting religious, denominational, and cultural pluralism as a sort of richness that cannot be renounced to, an opening towards the external world and a means to enrich human experience or the basis of a democratic society. Christians and Muslims have much to share and to learn from each other. They can challenge each other to live in rectitude and to realize in practice the great spiritualities and ethics that they continually preach. Thank you for your patience.